officially this is the first class of architecture design theories. I'm Professor Jay Kim from Department of Architecture. What I want to say is this is not fully theoretical. This is not fully about the class of theory and history in architecture. I'm a professor, also I'm an architect, but I'm specified in design, not in theory and history. So I want to, go this class for more the perspective of architects, not perspective of theory and history. When I'm succeeded this class from the senior professor, but I didn't get many information and also documentation about this class, so I have to define. I have to make the redefinition of the class. So what I thought was, I don't want to make the serious theory class. I don't want to make this class kind of boring. So let's just study architecture. Let's just study architects and their books, and just look at their architecture interest in terms of architecture design. So that's why, even though the main title of this class is Architecture Design Theories, but subtitle of the class is 10 Architects and 10 Books, and their books. So today is the first class, as I told you, it's about the introduction of the class. So I think this image shows the beginning of the class. I think I have my own website. I have my own website. I have my office website as well. But this is from my old personal webpage. This is still open, but I kind of I don't want to reveal this one in public. I wrote this post. If you can see, so this is 2008. So February 2008. So it's almost like 8 years ago. What I said was, I want to study the architects. So I'm gonna select 10 architects and I will study, but I didn't do that. I think I wrote this article right after visiting the Louis Kahn's building. The first, I think that one is the photo from the Exeter Library in, I think it's Massachusetts or Connecticut, I'm not sure. It's one of the most famous project from Louis Kahn. This is partial image of, what is that, the Yale Art Museum, I think. So this is one of the famous building also. And I got inspired by his work in terms of quality of space, and also, how to say, in terms of the power of architecture. I think that was probably one of the first time I feel that I had that kind of feeling. In my experience, I have a few moments to have a kind of a, feeling the power of architecture. The first time could be after the looking at the Pantheon, Pantheon in Rome, right? In Pantheon by Korean pronunciation. And sometimes old temples Buddhist temples in Korea, southern part of Korea. And also this one is very inspiring architecture to me. So I decided to study 10 architects from my selection, but I didn't do that because I was busy as always. I was lazy and busy. So now, I think this is very good opportunity to, my old decision again. So I selected 10 architects, and also I made I'm gonna make 7 lectures from 10 architects. First guy is famous, the god of modern architecture. He is a god of American architecture. He's super interesting guy. I mean, are you guys familiar with this one? He's Robert Bench. I mean, you know his name, right? The Robert Bentry is the American architect. His work is not that interesting. I mean, it doesn't look very interesting, but his writing and his books are very influential to the contemporary architects. He's kind of the god of postmodernism. The Lamcross, and also he's king of contemporary architecture. I mean, he may not. You guys are not may not be familiar with this one. He is a principal of Zaha Hadid Architects. Zaha Hadid already passed away. He succeeded her office. The reason I selected him is initially I want to add Frank Gehry because he's kind of first guy to use computational methodology in architecture, but he's not. I mean, he's very intuitive. He's creative architect, but he's not like theoretical type of architect. So he didn't have many articles. I think actually he didn't actually write about his theory about architecture. But this guy, he recently published very interesting books, two or three books. So that's why I added in this list. And also, I mean, the next one is FOA. Now their partnership broke up. The Alejandro Zaira Polo and Fasid Musabi, they are doing their own practice. But the beginning of this practice was very sensational. I mean, I think everyone here knows the project Yokohama Ferry Terminal, right? That is designed by FOA. And lastly, actually, initially I want to put a Korean architect, but I was struggling because if you look at the list of name of this architect, they are doing the global practice. But the Korean architects, I don't think we have a kind of a global. We don't have an architect to have a global practice, right? So we have kind of a local-oriented architect. We have many local-oriented architects, but not many global architects. So that's why I selected a Japanese architect. So Fujimuro, he has not only interesting buildings, but also he has interesting writings too. So I want to look at the Fujimuro with Toiro for the last part. And these, architects, they also have many important books to the architecture field. Le Corbusier, he has a Towards on Architecture. Towards on Architecture is a translate version, English translated. So, but no, I don't pronounce the French one, so I just put the English name, English title. Louis Kahn, actually, he didn't have his own book, but he had many good articles. So essential text is kind of collection of his important articles. So it is published recently. I think it's almost like 15 years ago, I guess. But that book could be very interesting. The Bentry, he has a super notable books, Complexity and Contradiction in Architecture and Learning from Las Vegas. Learning from Las Vegas is co-authored with his wife, Dennis Scott Brown. But anyway, he's a very important. He did a very important role in writing that books. Lem Cross, he's also he has a famous Julius New York, and we're gonna also look at the small, medium, large, extra large partly. And Patrick Schumacher, he also has a book about kind of a computation in architecture and so parametricism in architecture too. FOA. Phylogenesis, and also Fiaker Ingers. I think it's not less than 10 years ago he published, and also good book. Yes, it's not about his theory. It's more like the collection of his project. But the first introduction of this book has partly it shows he's thinking about architecture, and also we can maybe assume his theory of architecture. And also last one, so Fujimuro, he had some books, but honestly, I didn't read all the books he wrote. I just put the primitive future now, but I'm going to show we're going to look at the more books about So Fujimuro, not only So Fujimuro, but also Toyohiro. So these guys are eight architects we will mainly search for. You know, we had two kind of guest architects. So during the semester, as I told you before, as I told you at the beginning, we're going to look at the 10 canonical books in architectural history, architectural history of modernism and contemporary times. Among 10, these 4 books among 10, this is very important because this diagram shows this is survey of architects and architectural education. I mean, when I was studying at MIT, the one of PhD student, he did a survey to architects and educator in America, in the United States. So the question was, which book is the most important book to you guys, and which book do you think which book is very important in architectural history? So first book, this book, I think it might be. This book is, I think this is Complexity and Contradiction in Architecture, and that is running from Las Vegas. So you can see the 4 books, right? Only 4 books had many the boats from architects. These are other books. So this one is Complexity and Contradiction in Architecture. This one is running from Las Vegas. That is Delirious in New York. This one is a small, medium Raji, and X-Raji. So yeah, so we have 4 most important books in architecture history as well. So let's look at these guys and these architects and books in terms of a chronological arrangement. So we will mainly focus on about 100, recent 100 years in architecture history. So let's just look at the date of birth, just for having fun. The 1887, Le Corbusier was born in Switzerland, and Louis Kahn was born in the early 20th centuries. Actually, the first year of 20th centuries. So Robert Ventry, he was born in 1925 in America. Rem Koolhaas, 1944 in Europe, Netherlands. So, I mean, I was trying to put this, I was trying to select the architects, with more like the gradual, equal distribution. So, the times between Le Corbusier and Louis Kahn is, I think, is 14 years, and these two has 24. So this one is 19, so it's like the 15 and the 20, 25, that comes. And Patrick Schumacher and the foreign office architects, they were born in early 60s, so time gap between the Rem Koolhaas and these guys is 16 years, so it's the same logic, right? And so Fujimuro and Byakuya Ingels is 71, 75. I cannot believe that Byakuya Ingels is only 3 years older than me. He's very young. Yeah, and then Toyohiro Ito is the last guest. I mean, I selected these guys, just my, how to say, just by myself, right? I didn't have any logic about this selection, but after the selection of these guys, I found some kind of relationship. That was very interesting. So let's see the diagrams. That's why I made this diagram. And you know Beaux-Arts, right? You guys know the Beaux-Arts. Beaux-Arts is the French educational system. I think it was like the 18th centuries. I'm not sure. 18th centuries, 19th centuries. That was probably the first educational system in architectural studies. I think the Beaux-Arts school they firstly make the very the organized system in the architectural education. So Beaux-Arts, the educational system of Beaux-Arts, it also influenced on the American system too. So many professors in America at the late 18th, 19th centuries, they studied in the France and the Beaux-Arts, and then they moved to America. They went back to America, and then they taught the students by the way of the Beaux-Arts educations. So we can say Le Corbusier, he had kind of opposition to the type of architecture by Beaux-Arts, but anyway, he had some sort of relationship. Louis Kahn, he graduated from the University of Pennsylvania. So UPenn was one of the good examples to have a Beaux-Arts, the tradition in American the architectural education. The Robert Ventry, I think he studied from Princeton University. The Princeton also has a Beaux-Arts kind of a culture as well. And the Robert Ventry, he was a TA of Louis Kahn, so they have a very strong relationship. And Le Corbusier was a founding member of CIAM. Do you guys know CIAM, right? CIAM is, I think it's an abbreviation of French words, but in English it is International Congress of Modern Architecture. So the abbreviation of American English is actually ICMA, but in French it is CIAM. And the late times of CIAM, they try to have a more like the global the perspective. So they invited some Japanese architecture, like such as Kenjo Tange and Kiyonori Kikutake, actually, who had they had a very strong their own idea about architecture, which is metabolism. So Kiyonori Kikutake is the one of the key. He had a key role in the metabolist architecture in Japan. Actually, Kiyonori Kikutake he's a teacher of Toyohiro. Toyohiro worked for Kiyonori Kikutake. So it is. I think it's very interesting. I mean, it's not a very direct relationship, right? Corbusier and CIAM. I mean, it's a direct relationship, but these guys has a relationship. But Kikutake and Corbusier, they didn't have a direct relationship, but when he is influenced by Le Corbusier, I think actually, the metabolism is kind of the new type of modern architecture, in my perspective. And Ito, these two guys have a very strong relationship. And Fujimoto worked for the Toyohiro. So they have these three architects have a very strong relationship. And Peter Eisenman, he didn't have a direct relationship with Le Corbusier, but he, in some article and some interviews, he said he's kind of he admired Le Corbusier, and he tried to kind of not reinvent, but rethink about his architecture. And when he was in Europe, in his young age, he tried to press the bell of the door in front of Le Corbusier's office, but he didn't do that because he too much admired Le Corbusier. To him, Le Corbusier is like God of architecture. So how dare I can press his door, the bell. But Peter Eisenman and Rem Koolhaas, they have some sort of relationship because Peter Eisenman, he did support Rem Koolhaas when he wrote Julius Neo. So they have a relationship. But Rem Koolhaas this guy he's a super important person because, let me explain why I said that. Rem Koolhaas, Zaha Hadid, they have a connection because Zaha Hadid was a student of Rem Koolhaas, and also Zaha Hadid was the former the members of OMA, but even though she made her own office later. Patrick Schumacher, he worked for Zaha Hadid, and in a foreign office architect and Priyanka Ingers, both of them, they worked for Rem Koolhaas. So Koolhaas is like, center of these guys. I mean, these guys have their own kind of root, right? I mean, the tradition of this architecture it seems to end, but I mean, these guys are still influential. And also books. Toward architecture. The Corbusier, he wrote Toward architecture 1923. The Louis Kahn, he wrote many articles, but these texts, the collection of these articles was published 2003, late. And eventually, he wrote the Complexity and Contradiction 1966, and Learning from Las Vegas in 1972. And Rem Koolhaas, he published the book Julius New York 1978, and Small, Medium, Large Extras in 1995. Patrick Schumacher, he recently published 3 books actually: Autoposis of Architecture 1, Volume 1, 2010, also Volume 2, 2012, 13, I'm not sure. And also he recently, last year I think he published a new book too. FOA, they also published the kind of canonical books in contemporary architecture, which is Phylogenesis in 2003. Do you know this book? This book is, I mean, it doesn't have many texts, but introduction of this room, not introduce, has a forehand, not forehand. What is that? The first part of books. I mean, it reflects their theory very clearly. We have to look at that. And Priyanka Ingers, he made cartoon-like books in 2009. That is Yes is More. Fujimoto, yeah, he also had the books. He have many small books. So yeah, we also have this diagram. So we also have these 2 diagrams. So I mean, during the semester, the aim of us is to define these 2 diagrams, right? These 2 diagrams is the most important thing, I think. Yeah, just let's look at the architects briefly. The Corbusier, he was born in, I don't know how to pronounce that. I mean, this is French, I think it's a kind of French words. But he had a different name. I think Professor Nam Song-taek, he already talked about this, I guess. His early name was different from Corbusier. I think he adopted his name from maternal grandfather. Maternal grandfather is father of his mother.